She was forced to marry the poor village farmer her sister rejected. Everyone pitied her. Before Mrs. Obiora died, she made 2 promises. One daughter would marry into the wealthy Bello family. The other would marry the son of a village woman who had once saved baby Kemi's life. Years later, those promises became a trap. Mr. Obiora chose Chika to marry Ton Bello, the rich city man everyone admired, and Kemi, the younger sister, was supposed to marry Obina, the village farmer. Kemi refused. She cried, threatened, screamed that she would rather die than marry a poor man with red soil on his feet. And like always, the family bent around her. Kemi got the rich man. Chika got the village. No one asked Chika what she wanted. No one cared that she had spent her whole life giving up things so her sister could smile. She simply packed her bags and left. Not because she was weak. Because she was tired of begging people to choose her. When she arrived in the village, she expected shame. A mud house. A rough man. A life small enough to match the insult her family had handed her. But Obina was not what she expected. He was calm, gentle, respectful. He spoke to her like her feelings mattered. He did not touch her without permission. Did not mock her sadness. Did not treat marriage like ownership. And slowly, Chika began to breathe again. Then came the first surprise. Gold jewelry. Fine fabrics. A bank account opened in her name. A home far more beautiful than anything the Bello family owned. Chika discovered the truth little by little. Obina was not poor. He owned farms, businesses, transport companies, land, and investments spread across the country. He lived simply because his mother loved the village, and because wealth had never made him forget where he came from. For the first time in years, Chika was not being used. She was being honored. Meanwhile, Kemi's perfect city marriage began to crack. Ton Bello looked rich from the outside, but the inside was death, pride, and empty noise. His family was cold. His affection was fake. And Kemi quickly learned that the life she stole was not love. It was a transaction. When Kemi visited the village, she came dressed to humiliate Chika. She mocked the house. Mocked the villagers. Mocked Obina's simple clothes.
Thief! I know you took my diamond bracelet! How could you do this, Chika?
Then she accused Chika of stealing a diamond bracelet. That was when the village turned on her. Not violently. Truthfully. One elder stood and said, "The man you call poor has paid school fees for half the children here." Another said, "He rebuilt our clinic." Another said, "He feeds widows every month." Kemi's smile died. Then Obina stepped forward and calmly revealed receipts, witnesses, and the truth. The diamond was not stolen. Kemi had hidden it herself. She left in disgrace. But that was not the final humiliation. At Chika and Obina's grand wedding, high society finally saw him clearly. The mysterious tycoon everyone had been whispering about. The billionaire investor no one could reach. The richest man in the room. It was Obina. The poor farmer. Kemi stood frozen as the man she rejected held Chika's hand before kings, chiefs, business leaders, and families who had once looked down on him. Chika did not gloat. She simply stood tall. Loved. Chosen. Respected. And for the first time, her silence was not pain. It was peace. Because Kemi had fought to steal the rich man. But Chika had been given the man with character. And in the end, that made her the richest woman of all. Kemi stole the rich man and left her sister with the poor farmer. That was how everyone told the story at first. They said Chika Obiora had been cheated. They said she had been sacrificed. They said her younger sister had cried, threatened, screamed, and won. They said Chika had been sent away to a village marriage like a girl being carried quietly to her punishment. And Chika believed them. At least, she believed enough to pack her clothes in silence. Enough to swallow the humiliation while the women in the compound whispered behind their wrappers.
It is a pity, honestly.
Enough to watch Kemi sit in the parlor wearing gold earrings and a satisfied smile, already behaving like a woman chosen by destiny. But nobody knew the truth. Nobody knew that the man waiting in that village, the one they called a poor farmer, owned more land than the Bello family could dream of. Nobody knew that the quiet man in rubber sandals had companies hidden behind other names, warehouses across 3 states, investments in Lagos, Abuja, Ghana, and Dubai, and a private fortune so large that bankers stood when he entered rooms. Nobody knew because Obinna Nwosu had chosen not to let money become his face. And by the time Kemi found out, it was too late. She had already traded away the best life she would ever touch. The promise began before Chika was old enough to understand it. Her mother, Mrs. Amoka Obiora, was dying. Not dramatically. Not suddenly. Death came for her like a patient visitor, sitting at the edge of her bed for weeks before finally asking her to come. She had been a beautiful woman once, people said. Tall, soft-spoken, with a laugh that made men lower their voices and women forgive her good fortune. But by the time sickness entered her bones, beauty had become something gentler. Her eyes. Her hands. The way she still asked whether everyone had eaten, even when she could barely swallow pap. Chika was 7. Kemi was 5. Their father, Mr. Felix Obiora, moved through the house like a man whose body remained alive but whose spirit had already begun grieving. Relatives came and went. Church women sang. Neighbors carried bowls of soup. Medicine bottles lined the shelf beside the bed. The room smelled of menthol rub, old flowers, and fear. One evening, when the rain was falling softly on the zinc roof, Mrs. Obiora called her husband close. Felix sat beside her and took her hand. Amoka, he whispered. She turned her head slightly. My daughters. He closed his eyes. They will be fine. No, she said. The word was weak, but firm. Promise me. He leaned closer. Anything. She looked toward the doorway. Chika stood there holding Kemi's hand. Both girls were supposed to be asleep. Both understood enough to be afraid. Mrs. Obiora lifted 2 thin fingers. 2 promises, she said. Felix nodded quickly. Yes. First, one of our daughters will marry into the Bello family. Felix opened his mouth, surprised. The Bellos were wealthy. Old money. Business people. Connected. The kind of family that could protect a girl from suffering if the marriage was good. Mrs. Obiora continued before he could speak. Chief Bello and your father agreed years ago. I know. But do not forget. I will not. Her breathing grew harder. Felix called for water, but she shook her head. The second promise. He leaned closer. There is a woman in Yumu's village. Neoma Nwosu. Felix frowned. Neoma. Yes. She saved Kemi. Felix's face shifted. He remembered. Kemi had almost died as a baby. A fever. Convulsions. The hospital too far. Rain flooding the road. Neoma Nwosu, an old acquaintance of Amoka's family, had been staying nearby and spent the night cooling the child with herbs, prayers, and steady hands until morning came and help arrived. Mrs. Obiora's eyes filled. She saved my baby. Felix nodded. She did. She has a son. Obinna. Yes. He is a good boy. He will become a good man. Felix hesitated. He is from the village. Amoka's eyes sharpened with the last strength she had. Do not say village like it means small. Felix lowered his head. I am sorry. 1 daughter for the Bellos. 1 daughter for Neoma's son. Felix's throat tightened. They are children. They will grow. And when they grow, you will remember. He pressed a hand to his forehead. I promise. At the doorway, little Chika squeezed Kemi's hand. She did not understand marriage. Not really. She only understood that promises made beside dying mothers became things adults feared to break. Years passed. Mrs. Obiora died before dawn 3 days later. The house changed. Not all at once. Houses rarely become cruel overnight. They change by absences. No singing from the kitchen. No hand smoothing Chika's hair before school. No mother reminding Kemi to say thank you. No soft voice balancing their father's impatience. Felix loved his daughters. But love without emotional courage often becomes uneven. Chika was the elder one, so people expected maturity from her before childhood had finished leaving her body. Kemi is small, relatives said. Let Chika understand. Chika, help your sister. Chika, don't make your father worry. Chika, you know your mother would want peace. Peace became a plate Chika carried for everyone. Kemi learned quickly. If she cried, adults rushed. If Chika cried, adults said she was old enough to know better. If Kemi wanted something, she trembled, begged, fainted, threatened, sobbed, and somehow got it. If Chika wanted something, she asked once, accepted no, and later cried silently into her pillow. By 16, Kemi was beautiful in a sharp, attention-hungry way. Smooth skin. Large eyes. A laugh she used like perfume. She knew which relatives favored her. Which men admired her. Which women envied her. She knew weakness could be performed and that performance could become power. Chika was beautiful too, though people rarely said it in the same tone. Her beauty was quieter. Warm brown skin. Thoughtful eyes. A calm face that made people think she did not feel deeply. That was their mistake. Still waters do not mean shallow water. Sometimes they mean depth people are too impatient to measure. Chika finished school. Helped run her father's household. Kept accounts for a small trading business. Managed suppliers. Negotiated prices. Paid workers. Remembered birthdays. Carried grief. Kemi went to university in Lagos and returned during holidays with polished nails, expensive perfume, and stories about people whose names she spoke like currency. Daddy, she would say, dropping onto the couch, you cannot imagine the life in Lagos. Felix smiled. He always smiled for Kemi. I can imagine enough. Kemi would look at Chika, who was usually balancing ledgers at the dining table. Sis, you should come out more. Chika looked up. I do go out. To market. It is outside. Kemi laughed. It sounded light. It was not kind. When the marriage promises returned, they came wearing tradition. Chief Bello sent word first. His son, Ton Bello, was ready to marry. Educated in London. Handsome. From wealth. The kind of man churches prayed into daughters' futures. Felix invited both daughters into the sitting room. He wore a white kaftan and looked older than he had the day before. On the center table sat cola nuts, palm wine, and a photograph of Ton Bello in a navy suit. Kemi saw the photograph first. Her eyes brightened. Chika saw that. Of course she did. Felix cleared his throat. Your mother made promises before she died. Chika's heart tightened. Kemi sat straighter. One daughter was promised to the Bello family. His eyes moved to Chika. You are the elder. Chika lowered her eyes. Not from joy. From duty. She had known, somewhere inside, that this might be her path. She had imagined perhaps she could learn to love Ton. Or at least build peace. Then Felix continued. The second promise was to Neoma Nwosu's son. Kemi's expression changed. Fast. Who? Felix did not look at her. Obina Nwosu. From Umius. The farmer. Her voice sharpened. Felix's jaw tightened. He is Neoma's son. Kemi laughed once. No. The room went silent. Felix looked at her. What did you say? No, Daddy. I will not marry a farmer. Kemi. No. Her eyes filled instantly. That fast. That practiced. I am your daughter too. You want me to go and bury myself in a village? No one is burying you. What will I do there? Carry cassava. Fetch water. Wear wrapper and greet goats. Chika flinched. Felix stood. Enough. Kemi began crying. Not soft tears. Loud ones. The kind that called the whole house into the room. Relatives came. Aunts. Cousins. Neighbors who had apparently developed supernatural hearing. Kemi threw herself at her father's feet. If you force me, I will die. Felix froze. Don't say that. I mean it. Kemi. I will kill myself before I marry that man. Auntie Busy shouted, God forbid. Another aunt turned to Chika. Talk to your sister. Chika stared at her. Why was it always her job to absorb the storm? Kemi crawled toward her and grabbed her wrapper. Sister, please. Her eyes were red. Her face wet. But Chika saw something beneath the tears. Not only fear. Determination. Kemi wanted Tond. Not because she loved him. Because he glittered. Because she believed life owed her a better chair. Felix sat slowly. His face had gone grey. You want Tond Bello? Kemi nodded desperately. Yes, Daddy. And your sister? Kemi looked at Chika. Only for a second. Then looked away. Chika is stronger. There it was. The sentence that had carried so much injustice in their lives. Chika is stronger. Meaning Chika can suffer. Chika can endure. Chika can lose and remain standing. Chika can be given pain and still be expected to smile. Felix looked at his elder daughter. Chika. The room seemed to tilt. She knew before he spoke. She knew because his eyes were begging forgiveness before his mouth betrayed her. My daughter. No, Chika whispered. Kemi's crying quieted slightly. Felix rubbed his face. I cannot lose your sister. You will not lose her. She said. She says many things. Auntie Busy snapped, Chika, don't be wicked. Chika turned to her. For one moment, the room saw something they were not used to seeing. Anger. Sharp and clean. Wicked. Her voice was low. I am wicked because I do not want to be given what my sister rejects. The room went still. Felix closed his eyes. My daughter, please. That please broke more than command would have. Chika looked at her father. The man who had lost his wife and never recovered enough to be brave. The man who loved her, yes, but always expected her to pay the price of his fear. She stood. Then let Kemi marry Tond. Kemi's head lifted. Hope flashed across her face before she remembered to look devastated. Chika continued. And I will go to you, Muse. Felix whispered, Chika. She looked at him. Is that what you want? He did not answer. That was answer enough.
It feels amazing. The lace is so soft. Just a little bit more here, madam, and it will be perfect for the reception.
Kemi began bridal preparations for Tond Bello. 3 weeks later, Chika packed for Muse. Nobody called it punishment. They used softer words. Destiny. Promise. Tradition. Sacrifice. Mother's wish. But Chika understood. The rich man had been taken. The farmer was left. And she had been chosen for the leftover life because she was the daughter everyone believed would survive being unwanted. The morning Chika left, Kemi came to her room. She wore a silk robe and smelled like jasmine. Her hair was wrapped in a satin scarf. She looked at Chika's modest suitcase and sighed. I feel terrible. Chika folded a blouse carefully. No, you don't. Kemi blinked. Excuse me. You feel nervous that people might think you are selfish. That is different. Kemi's face hardened. You agreed. I was cornered. You always act like a martyr. Chika looked up. And you always act like a child because it works. For once, Kemi had no quick answer. Then she smiled coldly. Well. I hope the village air suits you. Chika closed the suitcase. I hope Lagos money suits you. Kemi laughed. It will. The road to Umu's was long and red with dust. Chika sat in the back of her father's car, watching the city fade into smaller towns, then villages, then stretches of farmland. Palm trees. Cassava fields. Children chasing tires. Women carrying firewood. Goats moving like they owned the road. Felix drove in silence. He had tried to speak twice. Chika had answered both times with yes or no. At last, near the village boundary, he said, "You hate me." Chika kept her eyes on the window. No. You should. I know. The words hurt him. They were meant to. Not cruelly. Honestly. He sighed. Your mother. Do not use mama to explain cowardice. The car went silent. Felix's hands tightened on the wheel. Chika's heart pounded. She had never spoken to him that way. She expected anger. Instead, his eyes filled. I have failed you. She turned. Not because she wanted to comfort him. Because the truth, at last, deserved a witness. Yes, she said. He nodded slowly. They drove the rest of the way without speaking. Newman Wusu's compound stood at the edge of Umu's, near a wide stretch of farmland. It was not grand. But it was clean, strong, and peaceful. A low cream-colored house with a red roof. A swept yard. Plantain trees. Clay pots near the kitchen. A long bench under an eudora tree. Chickens moved freely. Somewhere nearby, someone was pounding yam. Chika stepped out of the car and felt dust settle on her sandals. A woman came out of the house slowly. Neoma. She was older than Chika expected. White hair wrapped in a blue scarf. A walking stick in one hand. Eyes bright with intelligence. She stopped in front of Chika. For one moment, she said nothing. Then she touched Chika's face gently. You have your mother's eyes. Chika's throat tightened. You knew her. I knew her before grief made your father quiet. Felix lowered his head. Neoma looked at him briefly. Not unkindly. Not warmly either. Then back at Chika. You are welcome, my daughter. Those words entered Chika like water. My daughter. Not burden. Not replacement. Not sacrifice. Daughter. She bowed. Thank you, Mama. Neoma smiled. Come. Obina is at the lower field. He wanted to be here, but the irrigation line broke. Then she added, with a mischievous look, poor farmer work. Chika almost smiled. Almost. She had imagined Obina before meeting him. She had pictured rough hands, loud manners, dirt under his nails, maybe suspicion in his eyes because he too had been given a woman who did not choose him. Instead, she first saw him at sunset near the lower field. He stood ankle-deep in wet soil, trousers rolled, white shirt damp at the collar, helping two young men repair a pipe. He was tall. Dark. Broad-shouldered. But there was nothing boastful in him. His face was calm. His movements unhurried. When one of the boys made a mistake, he did not shout. He simply took the tool, showed him again, and handed it back. Chika watched from a distance. Neoma called out, Obina. He turned. His eyes found Chika. Something like surprise crossed his face. Then respect. He washed his hands before approaching. That was the first thing she noticed. He did not come to greet her with mud on his fingers simply because she had been sent to him. He washed, then came. Chika, he said. His voice was low. I am Obina. I know. Then she regretted the sharpness. But he only smiled faintly. I suppose you would. They stood awkwardly. Neoma watched them with open amusement. Obina said, I am sorry I was not at the house when you arrived. The pipe broke. So I heard. He nodded. This is not the welcome I wanted to give you. Chika looked at the field. At least something useful was happening. His smile grew. You prefer useful to polished. I have had too much polished. He looked at her then. Really looked. Not with ownership. Not with pity. With attention. I understand. That evening, dinner was simple. Yam. Stew. Vegetables. Fresh palm wine for the men. Water for Chika. Neoma asked questions about her mother. Not about the marriage. Not about how she felt being sent there. About Amoka. What songs she liked. Whether she still wore green often before she died. Whether she laughed when surprised. Chika answered slowly, then more freely. By the end of the meal, she had told stories she had not spoken aloud in years. Afterward, Obina walked her to the guest room. Not the bedroom they might one day share. The guest room. He opened the door and stepped back. This is yours. For tonight. For as long as you want. She turned to him. He continued. Our families made promises. We did not. Her eyes stung. I know what happened. Chika stiffened. He looked toward the dark hallway. My mother told me Kemi refused. Shame burned her face. So you know I was sent? Yes. And you accept that? His voice remained calm. I accept that you were wrong. I do not accept that your wrong should become another wrong inside this house. She stared at him. He met her gaze. You owe me nothing tonight. Not a smile. Not a conversation. Not gratitude. Not a wife's obedience. He paused. If this marriage becomes real, let it be because we build it. Not because others exchanged us like goods. Chika's tears came so suddenly she turned away. He did not move closer. That made her cry harder. Because she was used to people using her tears as permission. Obina only said, "Good night, Chika." Then he left. For the first time since the promise became her future, Chika slept without feeling watched. The wedding was modest. Not poor. That was different. People often confuse simplicity with lack. There were no diamond chandeliers or imported flowers. But there was music. Food. Fresh cloth. Laughter. A village choir. Women all relating. Men clapping. Children chasing each other between cooking fires. Neoma wore a deep blue wrapper and sat like a queen beneath a canopy. Felix came, looking ashamed and grateful. Kemi did not. She sent a message. City wedding preparations are too much. Congratulations. Chika deleted it. During the traditional blessing, Obina stood beside her in a clean white outfit, looking steady and strangely peaceful. When the elder asked if he accepted her, he said yes without hesitation. When Chika was asked, she paused. The whole gathering seemed to inhale. Obina did not look nervous. He looked patient. Waiting for her truth. That patience gave her strength. Yes, she said. Not because she loved him yet. Not because she forgave what brought her there. Because she had decided that if her life was going to begin again, she would not begin it by lying. Yes, she would try. That was enough. 3 days after the wedding, Obina gave her a gift. Not in public. Not with drama. He came to her doorway holding a small wooden box. I wanted you to have this. She looked at it warily. What is it? A wedding gift. I already received wrappers and beads. From the village. This is from me. She took the box. Inside lay a pair of gold earrings. Simple. Beautiful. Heavy enough to be real. Too real. Chika stared. Obinna. If you don't like them, we can change them. Change them. Yes. Where did you get this? He hesitated, then smiled. In a shop. She looked up. What shop in Umil sells gold like this? None. Then where? Lagos. Her brows drew together. When did you go to Lagos? I did not. He rubbed the back of his neck. I called someone. Chika closed the box. Obinna. Yes. Are you a poor farmer? He looked at her for a long moment. Then began to laugh. Softly at first. Then more. Not at her. At the absurdity. She frowned. This is not funny. No. He wiped his eyes. I am sorry. Answer me. He leaned against the doorframe. I am a farmer. That is not what I asked. His face grew serious. No. I am not poor. The words sat between them. Chika waited. Chika sat down slowly. Neuma's voice called from the hallway, amused. Tell her properly before she thinks we are criminals. Obinna sighed. His mother entered and sat beside Chika. My son is stubborn, Neoma said. He likes people to think he is only a farmer. Why? Neoma looked toward him. Because men who show money first attract people who love money before knowing the man. Obinna shrugged. I also like farming. Neoma rolled her eyes. He owns half the farms that supply 3 states and still comes home to argue with goats. Chika stared at him. You let everyone call you poor. He smiled. I find it useful. Useful. Yes. It shows me who people are. She looked down at the gold box. Then back at him. Does my father know? No. Kemi. No. The Bellows. Obinna laughed once. They especially do not know. Something inside Chika shifted. Not joy exactly. Not yet. More like the first crack in a wall she had built around humiliation. You should have told me. Yes, he said. I should have. Why didn't you? Because I did not want wealth to be the first thing you trusted. She looked at him. And what did you want me to trust? He answered without hesitation. My conduct. That was the moment Chika began to understand that she had not been sent to a poor man. She had been sent to a hidden one. Meanwhile, in Lagos, Kemi was learning the cost of glitter. Her wedding to Ton Bello was magnificent. Gold. White roses. A cathedral choir. Cameras. Influencers. Politicians. A reception hall with ice sculptures and imported champagne. Kemi wore a dress that cost more than Felix had spent on both daughters' education. She floated through the day feeling victorious. Every compliment confirmed her belief that she had chosen correctly. Ton was handsome. Smooth. Educated abroad. His family name opened doors. His mother wore diamonds before noon and looked at everyone like they were applying for permission to breathe.
It's good to see you.
At the reception, Kemi whispered to Ton, we look perfect. He smiled for the photographer. Yes. She did not notice that he did not look at her when he said it. The first cracks came early. Ton kept separate rooms. Work calls, he said. Then separate accounts. Family policy. Then late nights. Business. His mother, Mrs. Bello, corrected Kemi constantly. You don't hold a glass like that. Don't laugh loudly. Your family is not as established, so you must be careful. Do not embarrass us. That last sentence followed Kemi like a shadow. She had thought marrying into wealth meant freedom. Instead, It meant surveillance. The Bello house was beautiful and cold. Rooms decorated by professionals. Meals plated by staff. Conversations measured. Affection absent. Ton treated Kemi like an accessory he had overpaid for and was already bored with. And then came the debts. Not openly. Not at first. A supplier called the house. Then a bank officer. Then Ton asked her to sign something. Just a formality, he said. What is it? My love, don't start acting like your sister. That silenced her. She signed. Pride is expensive. Kemi kept paying. Months later, she visited Humiliated. Not because she missed Chika. Because she needed to see what her sister had become. She arrived in a white SUV with Ton, wearing sunglasses too large for her face, gold bracelet stacked at her wrist, and a smile sharp enough to draw blood. Kemi stepped out slowly. She looked around the compound. The swept yard. The plantain trees. The chickens. The clay pots. Then she laughed. Oh, Chika. Her voice carried. So this is your kingdom. Chika stood. Her hands smelled of mint and earth. Kemi hugged her without warmth. Then looked over her shoulder at Ton. Can you imagine? Ton adjusted his sunglasses. He looked uncomfortable. Not because he respected the place. Because village Heir did not know how to flatter him. Obina came from the lower field wearing a simple linen shirt and trousers. Kemi's eyes swept over him. Rubber sandals. No watch. No visible wealth. She smiled with pity. You must be Obina. I am. You are humble. Chika had the insult beneath it. Obina only nodded. Welcome. Inside, Kemi made comments about everything. The furniture. The food. The lack of air conditioning in the sitting room. The chickens. The road. The water. How do you survive here? She asked Chika. Peacefully. Kemi laughed. Then saw the gold earrings Chika wore. Her face changed. Those are pretty. Thank you. Real. Chika looked at her. Yes. Kemi's eyes narrowed. Interesting. Later, during lunch, she removed the diamond bracelet from her purse. Too casually. Too obviously. This piece is from Ton, she announced. Ton looked up sharply. Kemi smiled. Wedding gift, she passed it around. Everyone admired it politely. Then, after lunch, she suddenly gasped. My bracelet. People turned. It's gone. Ton frowned. What? My diamond bracelet. She looked around wildly. I placed it here. Neoma's face went still. Obina watched quietly. Kemi's eyes moved to Chika's wrist. Then to her earrings. Then her face. I don't want to accuse anyone. Chika stood slowly. Then don't. Kemi's lips parted. I only mean, sometimes people see luxury and become tempted. The room froze. Neoma rose first. You come into my house and accuse my daughter-in-law of theft. I did not say her name. You aimed your eyes like a finger. Ton stood. Kemi, enough. But Kemi had gone too far to retreat gracefully. I am just asking for my bracelet. Obina finally spoke. Open your handbag. Kemi stared. What? Open your handbag. How dare you? He looked at her calmly. You said it is missing. We will help you find it. My bag is private. Then your accusation should have remained private. Ton's face darkened. What's your tone? Obina looked at him. For the first time, Ton seemed to recognize something in the farmer's calm. Not poverty. Power. Quiet and unbothered. Kemi, cornered by her own performance, opened her handbag. The bracelet was inside. at the bottom. Wrapped in a white handkerchief. Silence. Chika stared at her sister. Kemi's face went pale. I must have forgotten. Neoma laughed once. Cold. Diamond can blind the owner too. Outside, villagers had gathered. News travels fast in places where people pretend not to listen. One of the elders, Papa stepped forward. Madam from Lagos. Kemi turned, humiliated. You came here to insult the man who built our clinic. She blinked. What?
The man you call poor pays school fees for half the children here.
Yeah. My daughter is in secondary school because of him.
My nephew too. 3 terms now.
A woman added, he built the borehole. Another said, he bought tractors for farmers and refused to collect interest. Papa pointed at Obinna. That man feeds villages. He only does not wear his wealth on his neck. Kemi looked at Obinna. For the first time, doubt entered her eyes. Ton looked too. Something like calculation moved across his face. Obinna saw it immediately. So did Chika. That night, after Kemi and Ton left in humiliation, Chika sat on the porch in silence. Obinna came and sat beside her. Not too close. I am sorry, he said. For what? That your sister hurt you in my house. Chika looked toward the road. She has hurt me in many houses. He nodded. Then said, you do not have to forgive people because they are blood. She turned. No one had ever said that to her. He continued. Blood can be sacred. It can also be used as rope. Her throat tightened. Where did you learn these things? He smiled faintly. From goats. Despite herself, she laughed. It came out rough. Unexpected. Alive. Obinna looked pleased. Not triumphant. Pleased. Like her laughter mattered. Months passed. Their marriage changed slowly. Not with grand declarations. With daily care. Obinna asked what she liked to eat. Then remembered. He noticed when she went quiet after phone calls with her father. He did not press. He placed books in her room because he noticed she read late. He asked if she wanted to manage accounts for one of the farming cooperatives. Not because she was his wife. Because he had seen her correct supplier numbers faster than his manager. Chika accepted. Then excelled. She found waste. Renegotiated transport. Created better records. Started a women's processing unit for cassava flour. Obinna listened to her ideas. Not politely. Seriously. At the end of the first quarter, profits rose. Obinna placed the report before her. This is yours. She looked at the numbers. Our work. No. Your leadership. Something warm and unfamiliar spread through her chest. Respect. Not praise. Respect. That was rarer. Their affection came later. In pieces. A walk through the fields. A shared joke. Rain trapping them under a shed. Obinna gently removing a thorn from her palm. Chika falling asleep over ledgers and waking with a shawl placed over her shoulders. One evening, she found him in the courtyard teaching children how to plant seedlings. His sleeves were rolled up. His hands muddy. His laughter unguarded. She stood watching him and realized peace had become love while she had been busy healing. That night, she knocked on his door. The door he had never demanded she enter. He opened it. Surprised. Chika. She lifted her chin. You said this marriage should become real only if we build it. His eyes softened. Yes. I think we have been building. A silence passed between them. Then he stepped aside. Not pulling. Not claiming. Inviting. She entered. Their wedding, the real one, happened later. Not legally. That had already happened. But publicly. Joyfully. by choice. Obina insisted on a grand celebration in Lagos. Chika resisted. I don't need noise. I know, he said. This is not for noise. What is it for? For every person who thought you were sent away to see that you arrived. She looked at him. And for you. He smiled. For me to show off my wife. She rolled her eyes. But she agreed. The event became the talk of Lagos before it even happened. Not because of the Obiora name. Not because of the Nwosu village. Because the mysterious owner of Nwosu Agro-Global, the private agricultural empire everyone in high society had been trying to identify for years, was rumored to be hosting it. Investors whispered. Politicians tried to secure invitations. Bankers panicked over seating. Kemi had true turned. He came home one evening, agitated. Do you know a company called Nwosu Agro-Global? Kemi barely looked up. No. They are massive. So. The founder is hosting a private event. And. Ton looked at her. Your sister's husband is named Nwosu. The room went still. Kemi laughed. But the laugh cracked. Obina. The farmer. Ton said nothing. The invitation arrived 2 days later. Elegant. Simple. Addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Ton Bello. Kemi held it with cold fingers. At the bottom, in embossed lettering. Hosted by Obina Nwosu, founder and chairman, Nwosu Agro-Global Holdings. Kemi sat down slowly. The world she had mocked had become the room everyone wanted to enter. At the celebration, Chika wore emerald green. Not loud. Not desperate. Beautiful in a way that did not ask permission. Obina stood beside her in a black traditional outfit, calm as ever, though Lagos elite circled him like planets around a hidden sun. People bowed. Politicians shook his hand. Bankers called him Tsa. A minister greeted him warmly. A billionaire from Abuja laughed at something he said. Kemi watched from across the hall, face tight with shock. Ton looked furious. Not at Obina. At his own failure to know sooner. Mrs. Bello, who had once looked through Chika at family events, now leaned toward Kemi and whispered, You said the man was poor. Kemi's lips trembled. He lived in a village. Apparently by choice. That sentence cut. The evening's turning point came during the toast. Felix stood to speak. He looked older. Repentant. For months, he had been trying to rebuild with Chika. Small calls. Real apologies. No excuses. She had not fully forgiven him. But she had let him come. He held the microphone with shaking hands. I made a choice years ago, he said. The hall quieted. I called it tradition. I called it promise. But the truth is, I failed my elder daughter. Chika's eyes filled. Kemi looked away. Felix continued. I gave her pain because I believed she was strong enough to carry it. That was not love. That was cowardice. A hush fell. He turned to Chika. My daughter, you deserve better from me. Then he turned to Obina. And God, in mercy, gave you better than I deserve to choose for you. Applause rose softly. Chika cried quietly. Obina took her hand. Then Kemi, drunk on humiliation and panic, made her final mistake. She stood. Turned, she hissed. Sit, he whispered. But she had already stepped into the aisle. This is hypocrisy. The hall turned. Chika closed her eyes briefly. Of course. Kemi's voice shook. You all act as if Chika is some queen now because she married a hidden rich man. If he had told the truth from the beginning, none of this would have happened. Obina looked at her calmly. What truth did you require, Kemi? That you were rich? He tilted his head. To treat me with respect. The room went silent. Kemi's face reddened. That is not what I meant. But it is what you lived. Ton stood, embarrassed. Kemi, enough. She turned on him. No, you enough. Her composure broke. She pointed toward Chika. She always gets pity. She gets praise for suffering. She gets rewarded for being quiet. Chika stood then. Slowly. The hall shifted. For years, she had let Kemi define the emotional weather. Not tonight. Kemi, she said. Her voice was steady. I was not rewarded for suffering. I survived what you used. Kemi flinched. You took what you wanted because everyone feared your tears. And I kept quiet because everyone praised my strength. That ended. The room was still. Chika walked toward her sister. Not with rage. With finality. I do not hate you. Kemi's eyes flashed with tears. I don't need your pity. It is not pity. Chika stopped a few feet away. It is release. You can no longer take anything from me that I am not willing to give. Kemi looked around. At the wealthy guests. At her collapsing husband. At her father's shame. At the sister she had betrayed standing taller than ever. Then her face crumpled. For a second, Chika saw the child Kemi had once been. Spoiled. Afraid. Loved badly. She could have softened. She did not. Softness without boundaries had nearly ruined her life. Security did not drag Kemi out. That would have been too dramatic. Obinna simply signaled quietly. Two event staff approached. Ton took Kemi's arm. They left under the weight of their own disgrace. No shouting. No sin. Just exit. That was worse. After they were gone, Obinna returned to the microphone. I apologize for the interruption. He looked at Chika. Then at the room. But perhaps it was useful. A few nervous laughs. He continued. Wealth reveals people. Poverty reveals people too. But character is what remains when both are misunderstood. He lifted his glass. To my wife? His voice softened. Who was never the lesser choice? The hall erupted. Chika stood beneath the applause, holding her husband's hand, and felt something settle inside her. Not victory over Kemi. Not even revenge. A deeper satisfaction. The truth had finally entered the room fully dressed. Afterward, Obinna did not ruin the bellows publicly. He did not need to. Their facade was already cracking. But he quietly withdrew the credit lines connected to his companies. Stopped the hidden supply partnerships Ton had unknowingly depended on. Refused bailout meetings. Declined introductions. Allowed the market to see what the Bello name had been hiding. Debt. Bad decisions. Borrowed elegance. Kemi sobbed softly. That is fair. Yes. It is. Years passed. Chika and Obinna built more than wealth. They built schools. Clinics. Women's cooperatives. Storage facilities that reduced waste for farmers. Scholarship programs for girls who were always told. When Chika became pregnant, Neoma danced for half an hour and then complained her knees were being persecuted. They named their first daughter Amara, after Chika's mother. Their son came 2 years later. Felix wept when he held both children. Not because grandfatherhood made him innocent. Because life had given him more time than he deserved to become better. He spent his final years making amends quietly. Not with speeches. With consistency. He visited Chika. Listened. Did not demand closeness faster than she could give it. He apologized again sometimes. She told him once, "You do not have to keep saying it." He answered, "I know. I have to keep living it." That was the first time she hugged him without the old stiffness. Kemi rebuilt too. Slowly. Painfully. Without glamour. She moved out of her father's house. Started a small event planning business. Real work. No borrowed status. No rich husband. No dramatic tears to save her. For the first time, she learned the dignity and terror of earning without performance. She and Chika never became the sisters they might have been. Some things lost in childhood do not return in the same shape. But they became honest. That was better than closeness built on lies. At Neoma's 80th birthday, Kemi came to Yumiu's. No sunglasses. No mocking. She brought fabric for the women's cooperative and spent 2 hours helping serve food. At one point, she stood near the garden where she had once laughed at the compound. Chika came beside her. Kemi looked around. I was blind. Chika smiled faintly. You were not blind. You were looking at the wrong things. Kemi nodded. Then said, he really loves you. Chika looked toward Obinna, who was carrying their son on one shoulder while arguing with a goat trying to eat birthday decorations. Yes. He does. Kemi's eyes filled. I'm glad. Chika believed her. That felt like its own small miracle. Many years later, people still told the story. They loved the simple version. The proud sister stole the rich groom. The quiet sister was forced to marry a poor farmer. The poor farmer turned out to be the richest man alive. The proud sister lost everything. The quiet sister became queen. Those things happened. But Chika knew the real story was not about marrying a hidden billionaire. The real story was about a woman who had spent her whole life being told strength meant silence, finally learning that strength could also mean refusing. It was about a man rich enough to buy attention but wise enough to hide from it until he knew who loved his character. It was about a father who failed and then spent the rest of his life practicing remorse. It was about a sister whose greed was really fear wearing perfume. It was about a village that was never poor in the ways that mattered. It was about choices. The ones made for us. The ones taken from us. And the ones we make after betrayal, when nobody is watching, when the applause is gone, when the real rebuilding begins. On the 10th anniversary of their first wedding, Obinna took Chika back to the lower field where they had met. The irrigation pipe had long been replaced. The field stretched green and endless beneath the evening sun. Their children ran ahead with Neoma's old walking stick, pretending it was a royal staff. Obinna stood beside Chika and looked across the land. Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if Kemi had not refused? Chika smiled. Sometimes. And she looked at him. At first, I thought she stole my future. He waited. She took his hand. Now I think she stole the wrong one. He laughed softly. She had found respect. Peace. Work with purpose. Love with patience. A home where her voice did not have to fight for space. And a man who had never needed the world to know he was rich before knowing who he was. That was the sweetest revenge. Not Kemi's ruin. Not Ton's disgrace. Not the Bello family collapsing under the weight of its own emptiness. The sweetest revenge was Chika laughing freely in a place everyone thought would bury her. The poorest road had led her to the richest life. And this time, nobody could take it from her.